I gonna stop some big mean Mother Hubbard from tearing me a structurally superfluous new behind? The answer? Use a gun.
And I couldn't agree more. Are you struggling with the game? Finding melee a little slow, unresponsive, or just plain not your style? Then the answer is the Light Bowgun. So why choose the Light Bowgun?
Cause it's easy. And it does a lot of damage.
The Light Bowgun from a mechanical skill perspective is probably one of the most forgiving weapons in the roster, mostly due to having high mobility, fairly high power, and most importantly, low commitment attacks. It's quite literally point and click, though you do pay for it with reduced defenses over your melee counterparts. Now the real difficulty lies in knowing all the mechanics actually surrounding the weapon, which is what we're going to be breaking down this fine day, and also build crafting, which we'll also talk about later. But for now, let's talk about ammos. So the first thing we have to talk about is, ironically, not really the gun itself, but what goes inside it. Because as we all know, it's what's on the inside that counts. We choose the gun, after all, around what we want it to fire. The first main distinction you'll hear people talk about is raw ammos versus elemental ammos. But we could just think about those as physical damage versus, well, elemental damage. I guess that second one doesn't change much. Without going too in-depth, raw ammos tend to do decent to good damage on everything, while elemental ammos tend to do more damage but require very specific builds tailored around each individual elemental shot. We'll talk more about that later. Our main raw ammos are normal, pierce, and my personal favorite of the bunch, spread. Normal fires a very basic, standard, or normal, if you would, mid-range projectile that deals one hit for medium damage. Pierce fires a long-range bullet that inflicts many small hits as it travels through or pierces a monster for also what I would consider medium damage. And last but certainly not least, spread fires a short-range, burst, hail, barrage, or spread of bullets for very high damage. Each of these raw ammos are divided numerically into 3 categories: 1, 2, or 3. Normal 1 through 3 doesn't change much other than increasing in damage per round fired, though normal 1 is special in that this ammo is always infinite and every single gun in the game can fire it. Pierce 1 through 3 increase the amount of times the ammo can tick while inside the monster, dealing more successive hits overall, though small monsters may not be long enough for all the ticks to actually trigger. Spread 1 through 3 fires 3, 4, and 5 small pellets respectively, and each individual pellet hits for more damage as the ammo numbers get higher. Oh, and shrapnel is a thing that exists. Yeah, don't use shrapnel. It also comes in 1, 2, and 3 level varieties, but all of them are just terrible. So why shouldn't you just use the highest available level ammo all the time? Well, you should, when you can. The price you pay for more powerful ammo is quite fittingly increased recoil and increased reload times. After all, as Newton taught us, more boom boom on the monster end is equal to more boom boom on your end. So you need to hamper that with absorber, aka anti-recoil decorations, and quick load, aka faster reload decorations, which we'll talk about soon. So what about them elemental ammos, Crow Man? Well, there was a reason I talked about the raw ammos first, in that basic elemental shots function much like normal shots, and piercing elemental shots behave like, you guessed it, piercing shots. They don't have any number variants, which is nice, but generally you don't want to use the basic elemental ammos without a gun's special property called rapid fire, which is another thing we'll talk about in a bit. But what about those specialty ammos, you say? I mean, so many of the guns have them, you know, sticky, slicing, exhaust, poison, paralysis, demon, armor, recovery, trank, and sleep. My answer? Don't worry about it. With rare exceptions, they're considered what you would call support-type ammunitions, which will get their own section. Nice to have, but not overall necessary. So what's the deal then with reload speed, recoil, and what in the hell is deviation? What the hell does some recoil mean? You see all those special modifiers under the bowgun ammo details? Slow reload, high recoil? Well, I have good news for you. You get to ignore just pretty much all of it. When we choose a gun, one of the most important things to do is to check its recoil and reload values for the ammo type we want to fire from. If it's too high and can't be lowered all the way with absorber and quick load decorations, then it probably isn't worth using. Recoil is also not what you think it is. Even with the highest recoil, you'll never see your reticle raise an inch from firing. Recoil is a measurement of your hunter's reaction to firing the round, which means the lower the recoil, the faster your hunter recovers, and the faster your hunter can put more heat downrange.
Till it goes click. Nobody fucks with the Jesus.
Speaking of the trigger going click, reloading is in a similar boat. Obviously, the faster you can put bullets back in the chamber, the faster you can get back to shoving hot lead down a monster's throat, but it's not just for damage, but also safety. You see, once you start reloading, you can't cancel it. You're stuck there for the entire duration, and if you get interrupted, you won't reload anything. It's all or nothing. This is especially dangerous if your gun won't let you reload and move at the same time for that ammo type. So the only modifiers you really need to concern yourself with, once you've chosen an ammo that is finding a gun where you can move the recoil to low and reload down to fastest. You can usually get away with having reload speed down to just fast, but you are hurting your damage potential and putting yourself at additional risk by doing so. A special side note though is that your support ammos don't always need to adhere to this rule. You likely won't be firing them all the time, so you can pick and choose when to put yourself at risk to use them, especially to help out your teammates. Solo, you might lose some of that sweet deep switching to fire a few slow paralysis rounds, but your team being able to pound on a helpless monster for a few seconds more than makes up for it. Now what about Deviation? Deviation is a bit of a weird animal. For one, if you're using spread, you can just throw that shit straight in the trash.
Know your fucking place, trash.
Spread doesn't give a fuck about Deviation. For all the other ammos though, yeah, you need to worry about it a little bit. Deviation controls whether the rounds you fire will curve after a certain point. It'll usually display what direction it will tend to go on the gun itself, which, if you get good, can actually get used to and adapt accordingly.
He's beginning to believe.
Unless you get the dreaded left-right strong random style deviation. Yeah, good luck reliably hitting anything with a gun like this. To combat this, we just use a few sniper decorations. At level 2, it'll even conquer strong deviations, so your shots will go straight as an arrow. Though, advanced Pierce users will know that sometimes having a curved bullet path actually will grant you some extra ticks while it's inside the monster. Not sure if that's worth having a gun that fires like your dick after a fun night, but to each their own. Now this may seem like a pain in the ass to constantly have to check how many specific decorations you need of absorber, quick load, and sniper just to have a functional weapon, and don't get me wrong, it is. But luckily all these decorations in their base form is just a single slot apiece, so it's usually pretty easy to slap these babies in when the gun calls for it. Things get a little more complicated though when you put critical firepower into the mix, which we'll talk about pretty soon, I promise. Oh, and as a quick side note, shooting bullets while airborne actually seems to ignore the recoil stat entirely, allowing you to blast a max of 2 rounds in quick succession, even if you couldn't normally. I haven't found a way to make this optimal yet, but god damn it if I'm trying. Something about a flying shotgun man really excites me. Where's my spread 3 rapid fire, Capcom? Speaking of rapid fire,
This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine.
you see all those funny little symbols on the ammo details page? A few of them are pretty self-explanatory. This symbol just means you can move and shoot at the same time. This symbol means you can reload and move at the same time. This symbol means you will actually enter a reload animation after firing a single shot of that ammo type. It's actually pretty worthless and detrimental. And this symbol? Well, we actually have to talk about this symbol. This symbol means it can rapid fire that ammunition type. When a gun can rapid fire an ammo type, it'll fire 3 rounds in quick succession every time you would otherwise fire a single bullet. Sounds pretty overpowered, right? Well, yes, but actually no. For one, the recoil stat applies even more heavily in terms of overall firing speed. If you're going to be rapid firing a round, you better have the lowest recoil you can without exception. For 2, it doesn't do 3 times the damage like you might think. Each round fired only does 70% of its damage if it were being single fired. So with all 3 rounds hitting, it's a little over 2 times the damage instead of 3 times. The skill Rapid Fire Up can ameliorate this with a nice 20% boost, netting you much closer to 3 times damage, but it's a very expensive skill to slot given that it's a 3-slot decoration that also requires Narwa parts to make. Rapid Fire seems best used on normal 2s, Pierce 2s, and non-Pierce elemental ammos. Unfortunately, Spread 2s get outclassed by Spread 3s just about all the time, even with full Rapid Fire Up decorations, much to my eternal chagrin. Unfortunately, there are no 3rd level ammunitions that can be rapid fired yet, but I do yet have a vain hope that Capcom will grace me with a Spread 3 auto shotgun with so much goddamn recoil I can only fire it while airborne. You can also get support type ammunitions in rapid fire flavors, though these only fire 2 bullets as opposed to 3. Still, where rapid fire excels is ammo efficiency, so it can be nice to have for the extra paralysis or stun during a hunt. Speaking of specialty ammos though,
Special occasion. Special occasion. Special occasion.
this will be a relatively short section, but I did promise I'd talk about them. A lot of bowguns have additional ammos you can fire that I refer to as support ammos. These ammos are more so for assisting your team or hampering the monster temporarily. Slicing fires a quick projectile that sticks into the target and deals cutting damage like a blade weapon. Useful for black market tail harvesting, also useful if the monster has only a few good gunner hit zones, as this uses melee hit zones. Sticky fires another projectile that also sticks in the target and blows up after a set time, dealing a certain amount of fixed damage. The damage is usually quite low, but it deals a hefty amount of stun when stuck in the monster's head, usually knocking them out after a few successful hits. Poison, paralysis, and sleep ammos do exactly what they're named after. The higher number next to the ammo just means it deals more of that status. Very reliable status generation. Exhaust ammo depletes a monster's stamina, putting them closer to their tired or exhausted state with their tongue lolling out. Fun fact though, hitting them in the head with this ammo also generates stun. It's not a ton, but can sometimes generate an extra knockout during a hunt. Demon and armor shots give a short-term but fairly sizable boost to attack or defense respectively. The hitbox for hitting your fellow hunters is also quite generous. Recover ammos do exactly what you think in that they recover health. Not super useful, but the option is there if you want to roleplay a medic. Yeah, I think that's all of them. Transition.
You gotta hit us up to get a pimped out ride.
So we've got the long barrel and the silencer. The long barrel increases your damage output and increases your critical distance range, which is another thing we'll be talking about soon, while the silencer pretty much just lowers recoil values. It used to be the general rule of thumb to always use the long barrel, but a new skill introduced changes that. The new shiny tune-up armor skill plays with these custom parts a little bit and enhances them, which does become important for some gun builds. Level 2 tune-up with a long barrel seems to be close to a 10% increase in damage, but thanks to critical firepower, sometimes it's more beneficial to take the silencer so we can preserve the lowest recoil stat. So, if you can use a long barrel while maintaining the lowest recoil and critical firepower, just do that. If you can't maintain the lowest recoil, use the silencer. Next section, please.
I want to be ninja.
Ooh, baby, the fancy stuff. The creme de la creme. The crazy go-nuts boom blam splody. Yeah, they're all terrible. Just kidding, but kinda sorta not. We get a few useful switch skills, but most are pretty underwhelming or are just so good that there isn't a point in using anything else. We'll still go over all of them anyway, obviously. First off, we have the forward dodge versus quick step evade. Forward dodge goes farther but has a longer recovery animation, while quick step evade is short but recovers quickly. With a couple points in evade extender, both are viable and pretty much just up to personal preference. Without evade extender, stick to the forward dodge. Quick step also has a property that increases the damage of your next shot after performing a dodge, with a window so short that you have to be literally spamming the fire button as you're dodging. It's completely not worth it. Next we have Reload and Elemental Reload. Reload is basic, while Elemental Reload moves your reload category for all ammos, not just elemental ammos, to a worse category while making reloaded elemental ammos a little bit more powerful. Generally not worth it, even if you're using elemental ammos. It should have been replaced with possibly a perfect reload system that was more active but could have failed. That's just my 2 cents though.
My disappointment is immeasurable, and my day is ruined.
Third, we have Marksman versus Critical Firepower. Now this is a massive game changer. Marksman is your standard normal firing mode, no change there, but Critical Firepower is a 20% increase in damage all the time, in exchange for worse recoil and worse critical distance. Wait, I haven't talked about critical distance yet? Are you sure? Well, shit. Quick lesson then. See how the reticle changes as I get within a certain range of my target? When it's like this, that's critical distance. The range from which your ammo will do its maximum damage. Too far and you'll do next to nothing, too close and you'll deal reduced damage. Spread has a short range, normal has a medium range, Pierce is long range, and support type ammos are generally unaffected, but the bullet will despawn after a certain distance. You'll get used to maintaining that distance perfectly over time. Lesson over. So back to Critical Firepower. Yeah, it's not a temporary buff. It's just a firing mode that's on all the time, but you pay a lot for that 20%. See, this is one of those switch skills that you pretty much have to use. Despite the cost of slotting in tune-up, a silencer, absorber decorations, and ballistics to get back your critical distance, it's just always worth it, because 20% is 20%. That is a colossal amount of damage to miss out on. Fourth, we have Fanning Vault, Fanning Maneuver, and Wyvern Counter. Wyvern Counter is your bread and butter. It's way too good and just blows the other switch skills out of the water in terms of usefulness. It deals damage, gives gratuitous iframes, repositions you, and it only costs 1 wire bug. Now, what you have on your secondary scroll is another matter, since both Fanning Vault and Fanning Maneuver have some rather niche applications. For instance, with Fanning Vault, you can fire shots while airborne that, like I mentioned earlier, ignore the recoil stat entirely. Or you can launch Wyvern Fire stakes into the monster from above, which, if they blow up in the monster, deal tons of mounting damage. Plus, it can make the backs of certain monsters easier to break. Fanning Maneuver, on the other hand, lets you Tokyo Drift reposition while imparting a nifty, neat 5% or so damage bonus that lasts a short duration. Of the two, I tend to go for Fanning Vault personally, but I definitely have one of the two on my secondary switch scroll. Last, and actually least for a change, is Silkbind Glide versus Mech Silkbind Shot. Silkbind Glide has honestly only 2 uses: inflicting mount damage on monsters that aren't actually the target of the quest, and wake-up attacks.
Hi, I'm Johnny Knoxville. Welcome to Jackass.
Mamma mia!
Mech Silkbind, on the other hand, has no real purpose other than a pretty good Scarface impersonation.
Say hello to my little friend!
I was actually quite excited for this skill, but it was a bit of a letdown. For damage reasons, you're better off just using your main ammunition, and for mounting purposes, it's not as good as Fanning Vault Wyvern Fire stakes. So it really doesn't have a niche. Quick addendum. I actually did find out through some testing that it actually does a fair amount of mounting damage, and it apparently also increases your ability to break the part that it's actually on. I actually haven't noticed a difference in that regard, but it's not completely worthless. Just mostly. Personally, I was hoping that the crystals that were stuck in the monster would generate extra damage or something, but that's just me. I tend to stick with Silkbind Glide, just for those few times it's actually useful. So, overall, Light Bowgun has some pretty underwhelming switch skills outside of Wyvern Counter. It unfortunately is what it is. So, what's left? We talked about the ammos, the switch skills, all the weird reload, recoil. Right. Time for armor skills, baby.
Hey! How's it going?
Hey, real man, I just got back from the mall, man. Guess what I got? Man, what you get, soldier boy? Man, I got me some bathing apes.
Sweet, sweet customization. The heart of any successful bowgun build. I'll list these in order of importance. First, we have S rank. Absorber, quick load, and tune-up. We've already talked about this a bit, but if you can't get your main ammo down to the minimum for recoil and reload, I don't think I'd bother using it. That gun belongs in the dumpster.
How about this one? I call it bold and brag. More like belongs in the trash.
Sorry, I must have missed that one.
These skills don't always need to be maxed either, just enough so that they reach their lowest values with critical firepower active. Tune-up is required a lot of the time on higher end ammos to be able to fire them cleanly with critical firepower on. it's kind of hard to pass up a 20% boost. A rank decorations are spread up, normal up, pierce up, and rapid fire up, or 5 levels of a chosen element up. Once you pick what you're going to fire, you need to capitalize on it hard. At level 3, each of these skills provide a whopping 20% damage boost to that respective shot type, and rapid fire stacks with the other skills, though it's only necessary if you actually plan on using rapid fire. These are very expensive to slot in, and you usually want it already there on your armor. Lower into B rank, we have Ballistics, Weakness Exploit, Critical Boost, and Attack Boost. Ballistics is especially important when using critical firepower since it extends your critical distance back to where it otherwise would be. Ignore what the description states. I could be wrong, but it seems that you only need the level of Ballistics equal to the level of the shot you end up using. So level 2 Ballistics for normal 2, for instance. It may seem unnecessary, but you'll lose a lot of damage if you can't maintain that critical distance. Weakness Exploit is a nice 50% affinity boost on weak parts, which as a hyper-accurate light bowgun user, you'll hit almost all the time. Crit boost gives those crits a bit more oomph, and attack up is self-explanatory. Though it bears mentioning that if you can't get attack up 4 at least, I would scrap the entire skill in favor of providing more affinity. In C rank, which I'm sure I'm going to catch some heat for, is Spare Shot, Evade Extender, and Ammo Up. These are nice to have, but not completely necessary. An exception is if you're using Spread, however. In the hands of a crazed shotgun hunter, Evade Extender becomes both a defensive tool and an offensive one, as you can chase after the monster more effectively. For Spread, Evade Extender is easily B rank. Spare Shot is the equivalent of a lottery system, but for bullets. At level 3, it gives you a 20% chance not to consume the bullet in the clip when firing, leading to sometimes outlandish times you can fire 10 or even 15 times in a row, but it's by its nature very inconsistent. It's best on ammo types with low clip sizes or poor reload stats. Speaking of clip sizes, we have Ammo Up. Each level of Ammo Up only affects its respective numerical ammo type, meaning to get more Spread 3 shots, you need all 3 levels. Very expensive to slot, however, so it might just be better to look for guns that already have large clip sizes. Still, it can be useful on niche occasions for special guns. And last, we have D rank, which is just
every other power I didn't mention by name!
Here you can customize a few things here and there, but by and large, they aren't necessary or just aren't super helpful. One exception I would definitely say is that you should always save a single 1-slot decoration slot for a brace gem when playing a spread light bowgun. Unlike most melee weapons, you can be interrupted out of every single one of your attacks, and most people don't watch where they swing anymore, so you just end up getting perma-staggered at all the wrong times. Woof, this video is getting a bit long on the teeth, so I'm gonna rapid fire these sweet mama jamas. Wyvern fire stakes, those things you hit the special button to put in the ground, do untyped resistible damage. Since they ignore hit zones, they are perfect for breaking parts that you might otherwise struggle to break. Fending maneuver will allow you to shoot a single shot while you're moving, but it's honestly not super useful and hard to aim. Good to know though. Cluster shots, very few light bowguns get them, so I didn't talk about them. Knock around your teammates even with brace. Don't use it online. Keep all the ingredients you need so you can combine more of your chosen ammo type on the fly. You need gunpowder with a level corresponding to the ammo type you choose to make and the level 1 variant of that ammo. For instance, to make Spread 3 during a hunt, you need to have Spread 1 and Gunpowder level 3 in your inventory. To combine more easily, put the option to craft all at once of your specific ammo on your radio menu. It'll top you up to full in a few simple clicks. You can also combine ammunitions in a few instances where you can't otherwise act, like when you're stunned during a roar. Elemental ammos are expensive, which is another reason I don't like to use them. You can buy everything you need for raw ammos at the merchant. For elemental ammos, if you want to combine them during the hunt, you need to use the Argosy. Finally, eat for feline temper at the canteen and get a free boost in damage at the cost of greater deviation, especially helpful for spread builds.
It's free real estate.
Now, I've pretty much given you all the tools you need to master the light bowgun and make your own builds, but I have a confession to make. There is a bowgun to rule them all. Though a little bit of a spoiler ahead, so if you don't want to be spoiled, this is as far as you go. Alright, everyone here that wants to be here? All ashore that's going ashore? Good. The final boss drops the most ridiculous bowgun I have ever seen. Seriously, what were they thinking with this thing? It fires all level 3 raw ammo types, so no rapid fire required at all. Just throw that shit in the trash. You get 380 raw damage, which is quite frankly straight up insane in the membrane. Negative 15% affinity, but a level 3 rampage slot that you can put Deora Soul in, which moves you to 0% affinity, just like that. Oh, and you can both move while reloading and shooting.
What in the goddamn?
What in the goddamn is right, Benny? This thing is a fucking monster. Listen to that chunky shot sound as well, just goddamn. The only trade-off I see is that it gets absolutely no support ammos, but that's a price I pay gladly. I'm gonna slap some builds up on the screen for this monster depending on what shot type you want to use, be it pierce, normal, or spread. In my humble opinion, it works best as a straight up spread cannon monster, but I can understand people not wanting to live on the razor's edge like I do. Unfortunately, gunners have
glass bones and paper skin.
So you'd think getting close to the monster would be the last thing on your to-do list, but I just can't seem to stay away. I made these with pretty much no charm in mind other than a 3-2-1 slot since my charms are shit, so you should be able to cobble together something halfway decent with just a few added decorations. The normal build and the Pierce build in particular are great long-range snipers with decent damage to boot, and both have built-in steadiness, so no worries about bullets flying off course even with feline temper. I didn't make an elemental build since it's not exactly my forte. If you'd like me to try and make one, leave a comment below. It may very well motivate me enough to make some elemental light bowgun builds. I'm sure there's potential there. I've just been having so much fun with this Goliath weapon that I just haven't needed to make one. I love me some light bowgun action, I really do. Especially spread, which gives me a nice compromise between being a gunner and yet not being a league away from any potential danger. So if you've been struggling to find a weapon that really fits you, or you're just tired of getting slapped around by every new monster you encounter, give the light bowgun a try. You won't be disappointed, until you get one hit slapped by endgame monsters. Seriously, keep your armor upgraded as best you can as a gunner. Your teammates are counting on you. With that being said, I hope you have fun. If you enjoyed the video, please let the almighty algorithm know via those fancy buttons down there. Subscribing, liking, and commenting go a long way towards pushing the channel further, so I really appreciate it. If you feel I've earned it, that is. I've got more content in the works, as always, for Rise and Elden Ring, so stay tuned. Happy hunting, thanks for watching, and as always, stay safe out there.